All set.
Okay, very good. Let's call the meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. It is now 7:31 p.m. Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge. This meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge is being held remotely and recorded via Zoom due to Borough Council chambers unavailability and is in compliance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act and associated regulations. Notice of this remote meeting was published in the Bergen Record, posted on the front doors of Borough Hall, and posted on the borough's website. The notice included the dial-in and login information necessary for public participation and access to this meeting remotely. A copy of the agenda for this meeting was made available on the borough's website near the posting of the meeting notice and included the dial-in and login information. During the public comment period of this meeting, if you would like to make a public comment, please press the raise hand button on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone keypad to raise your hand. The board will address you by name or by the last 4 digits of your telephone number. You may mute and unmute yourself by pressing the microphone icon on Zoom or dialing *6 on your telephone keypad. You must state your name and address clearly prior to making a public comment. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Snively to call the roll, please.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Mayor,
Here.
Mr. Caslin,
Here.
Ms. Boland,
Here.
Mr. Cray,
Here.
Mr. Gibbons,
Here.
Mr. Pfeffer is excused tonight. Mr. Canigo is absent at the moment. Councilman Glass is excused tonight. Mr. Gautier
Here.
and Mr. Salva.
Here.
Thank you. And just for the record, Mr. Salva will be seated to vote tonight. Also present are the board planner, Mr. Behrens, and the board engineer, Mr. Costa.
Okay, thank you very much. Our first item on the agenda for the evening is under approval of minutes. We have a draft set of minutes from our March 26, 2025 meeting, which was circulated prior to this evening's meeting for the board's review. I open it to the board for questions or comments. I'm going to just make one note. I think Mr. Gautier was present for the meeting on the 26th, but his name does not appear on the roll call.
Yes, he was present.
Okay, so we just need to add him there. And then I think we're just missing a caption for the discussion regarding the ordinance revisions on the swimming pools on page 3. There's a blank line at the top of the page there.
Okay, so it'll say discussion, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay, I'll fix both of them.
okay. Other comments, questions from the board on the minutes? Okay, there being none, I'll look for a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Gautier. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons.
And for this, I'll just do roll call because there were some absences.
Yep. Okay.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Gautier,
Yes.
and Mr. Salva.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move now on to discussion, and we're going to we'll continue our continuation of the state plan review process. We'll hold for a future meeting. And you know what? I am going to ask for the board's indulgence that we hold a discussion on the changes on the swimming pool and building coverage regulations, as well as the location and placement of signs on the buildings to the end of the meeting. I'd like to just move forward now into memorializations. We have a resolution for approval this evening for the applicants Alejandro and Kristen Gomez. Property is 847 Bogert Road, block 114, lot 12. A draft of the resolution was circulated prior to this evening's meeting for the board's review. I open it to the board for comments or questions on that draft. There being none, I will look for a motion on the resolution, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Gautier. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Gibbons on a second.
All right. Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland.
I think I need to abstain.
This one, yep, you were on.
Okay.
Mr. Cray,
This was from 326 or,
this was from 312.
312.
312, okay, yes, Gomez, all right, yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Gautier,
Yes.
and Mr. Salva.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Okay. Thank you, folks. Then we're going to continue on our agenda this evening under completeness review. The applicant is D. Jasuk. Property is 883 Wayne Avenue, block 1003, lot 2. Application seeking 3 variances in connection with a alteration to a single-family home. Ms. Steinle, start with you, please.
Yes, prior to the meeting, I reviewed the proofs submitted by the applicant and found them to be sufficient for the board to hear the application tonight.
Thank you very much. Mr. Barron's.
Good evening. From a completeness perspective, the applicant submitted an accurate property survey, plans for the proposed additions and site improvements, as well as existing photos of the existing conditions. I believe the applicant's provided enough for the board to review the application and deem it complete.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Costa.
I concur.
Okay.
They submit enough, so I would say, Mr. Chairman, it's time for you and the board to go to work.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Costa. Comments from the board, questions on as to completeness of this application? There being none, I will look for a motion to deem the application complete.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Godier.
Stay and raise your family. Oh, actually,
All right, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes,
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Gautier,
Yes.
Mr. Salva.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Okay. Thank you all. We're going to continue on down the line here under new business. Applicant is D. Jasuk. Property is 83 Wayne Avenue, block 1003, lot 2. Application seeking variance relief for building coverage, lot coverage, and rear yard setback. And I believe we've got the applicant and the applicant's architect in attendance this evening. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good to be here again. Mr. Jasuk will be testifying first and I will follow up.
That's right.
Here, hold on. I think our council just froze.
We can swear you both in.
You just froze for a second.
There we go.
Marina.
Please raise your
Yeah.
right hand. Thank you. Sorry. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right. And then the applicant, if you could please state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address for the record.
Sure. My name is Dilshan Jasuk. My last name is Jesook. I reside at 83 Wayne Avenue in River Edge.
Thank you. And Mr. Bruno?
Joseph J. Bruno, BRUNO, 29 Pascack Road, Park Ridge, New Jersey.
Thank you. And Mr. Bruno, could you just provide the board with some background on your qualifications and licensure?
Sure, be happy to. I earned my Bachelor of Architecture degree from the School of Architecture at New Jersey Institute of Technology in 1983, and I was licensed in New Jersey in 1988. The license is in good standing. I've testified extensively throughout the state of New Jersey, as well as in New York, where I'm also licensed, and my license is in good standing.
Thank you.
And I've testified a number of times before this board as well.
Okay. Any questions from the board as to Mr. Bruno's qualifications? Okay. There being none, Mr. Bruno, Mr. Jasuk, I'll turn the virtual floor over to you.
Sure. So I moved to River Ridge back in 2010. I used to live at 170 Oxford Terrace in apartments out there. And then I moved to 83 Wayne Avenue in 2016. And then I've been residing there since. I also work not too far away in Montvale, and my kids go to school as well in River Edge. So yeah, I plan to, improve on the house. I want to make it a little bigger and a little bit more, livable. The kitchen's one of my main concern being a little too small. And also, do a lot of home improvements to look at them a lot more better. Yeah, that's my intention, that I plan to stay here for longer time. And I work, like I said, I work in Montville and KPMG, been there for 10 years, probably gonna be there for the next long term as well. And I plan to invest in the home.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bruno, if you could walk us through your application.
Yes, I would like to start with the photo exhibit that I submitted. I will go through photograph by photograph. Let me just scroll up to the top. Can everybody see the photographs on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good. That's always, I'm a little nervous about that because I'm technologically challenged in that way. Okay, let me just get to the top here. And
And I'm gonna mark this as just exhibit A1. It was provided to the board previously and posted online, but I don't think it was within, I think it was within 10 days, so I'll just mark this.
Right, okay. And I believe I added a photograph since I emailed it to Mr. Alter, but I'll go through that in a moment.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Then this will
but
be
this is the
A1.
one, this is the one that I have up on, that is the current one. So photograph number 1 is the north or front elevation view of the subject residence. The addition is planned, the second story addition is planned to be over the existing footprint of the home. Photograph number 2 is the south or rear elevation view of the subject residence. And the proposed first floor expansion is in this area where the patio and the table are. So it's in this general, the general vicinity. Photograph number 3 is the east elevation view of the subject residence. So the driveway would be to the right of the photograph. Photograph number 4 is a view looking north from the front yard of the subject lot. Photograph number 5 is a view of the residence to the east of the subject residence. I was standing in the middle of Wayne Avenue when I took the photograph. Oh, incidentally, I took the photographs over this past weekend. Photograph number 6 is a view of the residence to the west of the subject residence. Again, taken from the middle of Wayne Avenue, and I'm grateful that the traffic on Wayne Avenue is very, very slight. Now, photograph number 7 is the most telling for the purpose of our discussion this evening. Where this little red mark is, that's the subject lot, the subject house. The addition is, the first floor addition is proposed in this area where the patio is. And as you can see, directly behind there, you see the residence on Lafayette Avenue, which is to the rear of the subject lot. So I'll go through the vital statistics of the variances in a moment, but you'll see that the addition backs up against an open area and not directly adjacent or in line with the residence on to the rear on Lafayette Avenue. And likewise, McCreer Avenue, I think it's pronounced, there's an outbuilding here which would be the southeast corner of the subject lot, off of the southeast corner of the subject lot. So I'll go back to, I'll share my screen for the drawings. Can everybody see this drawing?
Yes.
Okay. So I will like to go over the variances required first, and then I'll walk the board through the drawings. So
Mr. Bruno, sorry to interrupt you. Could you just make that a little bit larger?
Of course, yes.
There you go.
So the rear yard setback, we're required to be 25 feet. We have an existing nonconformity of 22.8 feet, and I will just go toggle over to the site plan here. And we're proposing a rear yard setback of 20.4 feet, which can be seen here. This shaded area is the area of the one-story addition with the terrace above. The second variance that we're requesting is building coverage variance. 25% is permitted in the zone. At present, we are at 24.95%, and we are proposing 27.5%. Then we have two lot coverage variances, one excluding yard amenities and one including yard amenities, which I believe is a fairly new ordinance requirement. We're permitted 30% on the lot coverage excluding yard amenities. We're at 32.58, which is an existing nonconformity, and we are proposing 35.4. Lot coverage including yard amenities is permitted is 35%. We're at 39.98% at present. We are at 42.13% as proposed. It's important to note here that we have an undersized lot where the lot requirement or the zone requirement for the lot area is 7,500 square feet. We are at 6,000 square feet. I would point out to the board that if we had a conforming lot, we would comply with all of the with the coverage requirements at least, but we would still be required to apply for the variance for the rear yard setback. I will go to the first floor plan, and I will enlarge it. So the front entrance is in this area where I'm tracing with the cursor. Got the garage here, existing living room, existing dining room, existing master bedroom, bath, and then we have a small kitchen here and an existing sunroom in this area. The area delineated, by the hatching or the diagonal lines is the area of the proposed first floor addition, and we're proposing to come off the rear wall of the main rear wall of the house, 11 feet 6 inches, with a width of 13 feet 6 inches for the addition. At the second floor, over the main box of the living space, we are proposing 2 bedrooms, a home office, and a den with an unroofed terrace, which is situated directly over the proposed expansion for the kitchen. And these closets that you see in red here are stacked directly above the closets that are in the first floor bedroom area. From an architectural standpoint, we are proposing a modestly styled, colonial style addition with clapboard siding, asphalt shingle roofing. The existing stone veneer at the first floor level of the front of the house is proposed to remain. We will need to extend the chimney up, of course, for the fireplace. There are a few items on the Costa letter that I would like to address. On page number 3, general comment number 6, it talks about the existing vinyl fence that is encroaching into the adjacent southern properties. As part, I've spoken to Mr. Jasuk, and as part of the application, the fence will be relocated to his property so that there will be the encroachment will be eliminated. Then there was also a note regarding, I think I had a typo. About the existing concrete walkway to remain along the easterly lot line. That is that was a typo. We would be removing that and replacing it with bluestone slab walkway, stepping stones with grass between. So it's a much softer type of treatment for the pathway. So I just wanted to clear that up because the letter on item 8 had requested that to be cleaned up. Stormwater management, if the project is approved, the owner will engage a New Jersey licensed engineer to design the rainwater collection system from all new roof areas. And I believe the standard in River Edge is 3 inches per hour rainfall duration. So that will be in effect as well. Item number 1 on lighting and landscaping on page 4. As far as lighting is concerned, there would just be the typical type of residential style wall sconces that will flank the patio door, and perhaps a motion sensor floodlight, which is pretty standard, and the floodlight will not be shining into the neighbors' yards. Generally speaking, they're pointed down at about a 45-degree angle to prevent light spillover to the neighbors' lots. I would just like to go back to the photograph, the photographs of the environs, and let's see, I had it up here a moment ago. Oh yeah, this is the one I want. Again, this is the fence that will be reorganized to be completely on the Jasuk's lot. And I would just want to point out to the board that where I'm tracing the cursor is where the proposed addition would be that requires a rear yard setback variance. And as you can see, there is a lot of open space to the neighbor behind. So with that, I would be happy to answer all of your questions.
Okay. Excuse me. Thank you. Why don't we start with our professionals? Mr. Behrens, can I start with you?
Sure. Good evening. Hello, Mr. Bruno. Thank you for the thorough overview of the project. I guess I just want to clarify a few items, not too many questions per se. So is it accurate that the building coverage variance is really a function of the first floor kitchen addition, would you say?
Yes, that is that's the main impetus. I mean, we're compliant at present, but the kitchen addition is causing the variance. And I would respectfully suggest to the board that the excess is de minimis, given the overall condition and configuration of the site.
All right. And just to specify the excess, you're over by 2.5%, which I believe equals 150 square feet. Is that accurate?
I believe so, yes.
Which is probably close to the exact kitchen addition dimensions, I would imagine.
Yes, and if we had a conforming lot, the coverage would be 22%. So, and I think if we, if you don't mind, I'll just toggle back to the photographs a moment. The scale of the home is not out of place with the homes in the surrounding area.
Okay. And just again to define lot coverage, so you're at 40% now, proposed increases to 42.13%. And I believe that represents an overage of about 428 square feet. But as compared to the existing condition is an additional 120 square feet.
I think that's accurate, yes.
Right. So really an increase of 2.13%, or again, about 120 square feet, just for the board's information. Do you have a sense of how large the proposed patio is from a square footage perspective?
Square footage, yeah, I can give that to you right this very moment. I'll just.
Okay.
At 175 square feet.
170.
And it would be on, it's directly on, it's a stone patio directly on grade, so it has a far less visual impact than, say, an elevated deck would have.
Okay, thank you. Are you aware, as part of the new ordinance, that we do allow, we'll call it a discount for impervious pavers? Is that something the applicant's aware of or has considered?
I looked through the ordinance, I may have missed that, but pavers would definitely be something to consider, because if we could get, what is it, a 25% discount?
I think it's actually 50%. So I think you have
50%.
two options, actually. So, well, actually, you have one option without increasing the building coverage. So I think it's a 50% discount without reviewing the ordinance.
So let me just do a quick calculation on that then. Let's see.
And the same would apply to any other, paved areas that you might be revising.
So the final proposed improved lot coverage would be 40.6%.
Okay.
That's all in, including the art amenities.
And just to be clear, in that case, the product would have to be reviewed by the building department and engineer just to make sure that the specifications actually allow for permeability.
Of course, yes.
But in any event, I just want to offer that. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Bruno.
Thank you, Mr. Behrens. Mr. Costa?
Very quick. Obviously, you testified that you're going to handle, if it's approved, stormwater, which is fine with me if it's okay with the board. One quick question. The roof overhangs, and I believe that's still in the ordinance, right, Tom? And I think it's still in the ordinance that we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, I think that is still in the ordinance. The overhang counts towards the coverage.
Yes, and I've allotted for that in the calculations.
Okay. But that comes, all right, so that's 124 square feet,
Correct.
which probably almost negates what you're asking for. That would be my only question. Can you make it smaller? Is it?
We can.
Less
we
impact?
could certainly make it smaller, sure. We could do a 6-inch overhang, because I believe the gutters do not count. Is that correct?
I'm going to throw that to Tom.
Technical answer is, I think, from the ground to the sky. A practical answer is that the gutters aren't usually shown on the plans, and they're probably more often than not factored in. But again, there's the technical answer and there's the practical answer.
And then I guess
Technically speaking, the answer is no. The technical answer, yes. Right.
All right. And then I guess the only other question is, why wouldn't you line it up with the existing sunroom? You projected a little bit further with the addition, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, that was just to get the requisite space within the addition.
Yeah. That would be it. That would be it, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Costa. Let's go to the board. Mr. Gibbons, can I start with you?
Sure. So just to confirm, you're not really doing anything to the first floor except making the kitchen bigger. So the current layout of the master, the living room, that's all staying the same.
Yeah, there are 2 bedrooms on this side of the house, and we're just removing the wall between to create the master.
So currently there's 2 bedrooms on the first floor, and you're making
Right, one is a master, and then the other is is used as a home office, a spare bedroom. So we're going to take the existing master and just enlarge it into the into the adjacent room.
Okay. And then upstairs, I know you're calling it 2 bedrooms and a den or in an office, but you really have 3 bedrooms upstairs.
Well, there's there's 3 because the home office does have a closet, so it would be considered as a bedroom. The intent is for, I believe Mrs. Jasuk works from home, and she presently uses that space in the rear of the home that is being combined with the existing master to create a larger bedroom area. So her office will be upstairs, and then could also be used as a guest room when relatives come from overseas.
Right. So, okay. So you're shifting a bedroom from downstairs to upstairs. So I have a similar question to Mr. Costa. Why didn't it just we'll go back downstairs to the kitchen.
Sure.
I could see you going a little more to the side and, not asking for a variance here. You went a little bit over, I guess, into like behind the bathroom on the left of the screen. You could certainly, I would think you could have made the room more go that direction or something to not protrude further into the backyard. I know it's not a lot of square footage going into the backyard, but just wondering if it could be squared off and keep the square footage, but just make it not go further into the backyard.
Okay, may I mute my microphone and I can speak with Mr. Jasuk about that?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, I'll be back in a second.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, you can't mute the cursor.
Okay, we're back. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, one of the reasons that drove the design, of course, was to preserve, the bathroom window here, because we've got a shower here and so on. So, but Mr. Jasuk is amenable to making the rear wall of the kitchen flush with the rear wall of the sunroom, and then we would just extend to the left.
Okay, because that could just get rid of one of the variances that you're asking for. And I don't know how everyone else on the board feels, but just throwing it out there. And just to
Well, I don't know whether it would eliminate the variance or just make it less. Let me just see what that is. Just so the record is clear.
Yeah, the rear yard setback is what I was alluding to. Doesn't fix it.
Yeah, we would still need a variance, but it would be less.
But it wouldn't be intruding more into the backyard, really, from what it is now.
It
If
would match the existing.
it would match the existing, which is 22.8.
Okay.
So it would be 22.8 instead of, be 22.8 instead of 20.40.
Okay, and then if you were to do the impervious pavers, what would our coverage be? You were projecting 42. Would it be bringing it closer to 40 at that point, or?
Yeah, let me just go back to my numbers because I
It's
want to make
40
sure I'm giving it to you accurately.
I appreciate that because 42 is, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but 42 tends to be a pretty high number. So if it was closer to 40, I'd be happier.
If we went to the impervious, the pervious pavers, sorry about that, we'd be at 40.68%.
Okay.
Instead of 42.13.
Okay, I think those were the questions that I had. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Ms. Boland?
Yes, so my question is how important is the side walkway? Because that would save a lot if you really didn't need a walkway to the rear yard.
We could have it just grass, right?
Yeah, we could eliminate that, yeah.
That would be substantial, I would think.
I like the grass too.
Yeah, so we'd be at that's another 110 square feet, so 110 87 minus 2.28 divided by 6,000 would be 38.85%, so 38.9, where we would be under the 40%.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Boland. Mr. Godier?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, so I just, I think I'm satisfied with the two concessions. I just wanted to ask specifically, are those concessions something you're willing to do, which would be, is this something that we can put into the motion that you're reducing the walls, the rear setback, so it matches the current rear setback, which makes it grandfathered, and that you're removing the sidewalk and you're going to be using impervious coverage. So just wanted to ask if that's something firm, because in previous, sometimes in previous, it was not necessarily agreed to, but it was spoken of. So is this agreed to?
Yes.
Excellent, then I'm good.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, I have a question though for you.
Yeah.
Why do they make you sit out in the front lawn of Borough Hall for this meeting?
Well, I could also be in Memorial Park, but I've chose this background today.
In the beginning of COVID, when we first started to do these, there was, as you can imagine, a learning curve for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I won't name the town. It wasn't River Edge though. And one of the board members, his naked wife happened to walk behind him on camera.
Wow.
Yeah, that was interesting.
That will
yes,
never happen in my house.
To get back to your question, yes, we would definitely consider those.
Well, that's the language that I'm checking on. Consider is different from agree to. Are you agreeing to the changes that have been suggested?
We are.
Okay, great. Then I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Salva?
Yes, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Craig?
Well, I'm good at this time. Thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions from my perspective. So with that, I will look for a motion to open to the public for public comment on the application.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Cray. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Okay, at this time, we are now open to the public for comments on this application only. Ms. Steinle, do we have anyone?
There is one person in the public, so if you are interested in asking questions or making a comment about this application, please press the raise hand button on Zoom now. I think they just joined, so.
Okay,
All right. So this is the application for 83 Wayne Avenue. If you're interested in making a public comment, please press the raise hand button on Zoom. Nope, I don't
okay.
see anything.
We'll take that as no one interested in commenting to the public. With that, I will look for a motion to close to the public, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Mullin. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Gaudier. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? Okay, at this time, we're closed to the public for comment on this application. Final questions or comments from our professionals or members of the board?
I just wanted to go through some of the conditions that were agreed to on the record, that the applicant will relocate the fence on the property to eliminate the encroachment.
Yes,
That's correct. That the applicant will engage a New Jersey licensed engineer to design the stormwater collection system in coordination with the borough engineer.
correct.
That any lighting will be shielded and angled away from neighboring properties to avoid spillage.
Correct.
The applicant will utilize permeable pavers and work with the borough or permeable paving and work with the borough to confirm permeability to get the reduction in the lot coverage.
Correct.
And the first floor rear addition will be made flush with the existing sunroom for a setback of 22.8 feet, rear yard setback. And then the lot coverage with the permeable paver reduction, all in will not exceed 38.9%. Was that correct
Yeah,
number?
we could just call it 39, just so it's.
39.
Yeah, if that's acceptable to the board.
Yeah, I think. And the walkway would be, well, whatever pay is going to be eliminated to just keep it at that number.
Right, the stepping stone walkway between along the easterly lot line, well, on the easterly side of or garage side of the building will be eliminated.
Eliminate, okay. All right, that was everything that I had.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Steinle. If there are no further comments or questions from the board or professionals, I'll look for a motion on the application, please.
Well, in the matter of variance for 83 Wayne Avenue, block 1003, lot 2, I move that we accept the variance submitted with the conditions that were just listed by Ms. Steinle.
Thank you, Mr. Cray. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Salva.
All right, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Gautier,
Yes.
Mr. Salva.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
and Best of luck with your project.
Thank you. And thank you for your time this evening. I know it's a big commitment.
Thank you and good luck
Thank
with your
you.
home.
I
Thank
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
Me too.
Okay, we are now going to circle back on our agenda to our couple of earlier items under discussion. The first being the continuation of our previous discussion on changes to the borough's ordinance concerning regulations for swimming pool and building coverage. We had a revised draft of the ordinance change that was circulated, and Ms. Steinle, if I could ask maybe just a brief summary of what's been updated.
Yes, so as we discussed at the last meeting, there was the revision to include swimming pools and hot tubs as excluded from building coverage calculations. And then the other main change was the addition of the diagram for the roof height. And right now I put the language as 6/12 because that's like the standard language that's used, even though it is 1/2, but usually that's the way it's written out in reality. And then the roof height, the diagram shows all different types of roofs that could be possible, and if it's the language right now is if it's a detached garage, it could be up to 15 feet, as long as the pitch is not less than 6/12. And then if it's another type of structure, it has to be 12 feet. I believe that was the language. I actually forgot to print it out, but if that was my memory from what the most recent changes were.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Good. No, I was just going to read off the copy here. It just reads, except as provided in section 416-32, no such accessory building or structure shall exceed 12 feet in height, except for garages having a roof pitch not less than 6/12. See the diagram below, and flagpoles which shall not exceed 15 feet in height.
I just wanted to add, just to make it clear and not be overly prescriptive, that the sloping roof pertains to more of a gable style than a shed roof, let's say, which could just be a long slant, unless the board doesn't get it. I thought the point was to have sort of a peaked roof that slopes down to either side. If it's just, again, being overly prescriptive, feel free to ignore that.
If it was a shed style roof, it would still have to comply with the 6/12 slant, like angle,
Right,
correct?
which might take care of itself over that span
Yeah,
anyway.
because then it would be, I think in the diagram, it shows just a half
Mhm.
of how, and then that would be like, if it was a slant roof, then it would just be
Let's
half
see.
the peak. And the peak of it
Yeah.
would still have to be 15 feet max.
True. Okay.
Any
I
other
don't know what type of garage that would be, but
Yeah, but a little, may I through the chair?
Yeah.
It's gonna be a little bit different because the shed is gonna be 15 feet, the full width.
well,
of the
it's only for
garage.
garages, not for sheds.
No, but I'm saying, if it's a gable, it's only a portion of it because you got the triangle.
Right, up to the peak.
Shed, you're gonna have the whole
Yeah.
thing is 15 feet.
Yeah.
One side of the higher part of the shed. And I think that's
No,
where
or we only have I thought the language was just garages and flagpoles could be 15 feet, not sheds.
I meant a garage, but a shed roof.
Oh, okay. Oh, shed roof. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is basically the shed, the whole front of the shed will be 15 feet, where if it's a gable, it's only a portion of it. To the peak, so you're
Yeah.
losing that. But again, that's the only thing, if you want to make it more descriptive as far as what type of roof. And I think that's what you're saying, right, Tom?
It was just a thought, and I was thinking more along the lines of the garage, when you have a larger garage, I don't know, people are creative and increasingly so. So, maybe it could be a non-issue. Again, we don't see too many new garages, really just replacement of old ones in certain areas of the town, around the Summit area. Just a thought.
Anyone on the board have a feeling strongly one way or another? Take that silence as a no, and
My only
Like,
comment
we-
is I don't think you could be too descriptive. As you said, people get creative, so if Tom thinks more, needs a little bit more description, I would say that'd be good.
I guess the thought is just, again, pertaining to garages specifically with the 15-foot height allowance, that it's, measured to the peak. Maybe we call it a gable style roof. I don't know how else, we could come up with something, but yeah, the point would be to prohibit a flat roof that's 15 feet for the whole area of the building. And a shed roof with, let's say you have a garage that's 20 feet deep, would be 15 feet at a slope of 612, whatever that gets you. I'm not going to do the math, but and to Mr. Cos's point, when you have the shed roof, the whole face would be 15 feet, not just the point. In that case, just a thought.
do we have a separate provision regarding sheds, or is that just included within the confines of accessory structure?
It would be included. There is a separate, I think, area limitation, but it would just be 12 feet. You could have any style roof.
Okay.
This is just for the exception for garages. Yeah. And beyond this, one other issue that came up tonight, which I think may be worth discussing, is that the definition of building area does include roof eaves. And so obviously that impacted the application tonight. Some towns include it, some don't. Again, some regulate from the ground to the sky. Some give an exemption for the roof eaves, which are typically, anywhere from 6 inches to 2 feet that project from the building wall. Again, that's the roof overhang, right? And so I think I did a quick calculation. If you add up, the typical perimeter of a house in River Edge, it probably amounts to about an extra, maybe about 2% of building coverage on any particular project. So it's a question of does it count or not? I think if we do keep it, we have to be cognizant that the building coverage calculation does include it, and just review things consistently, or again allow for an exemption. It's there's no right or wrong. It's just different towns do it differently.
But so it's calculated for building and not lot?
It could go either way, frankly. I'm trying to look at the one example that I have.
Okay.
So, from a building coverage perspective, you're concerned about the bulk of the building, right? So the building walls, at that point, you really, you kind of have slivers of roof that extend. On the one hand, they do stop rainfall from falling straight down. On the other hand, the ground underneath is exposed and can accept or absorb water.
I would have to, I would think that it's not impeding water getting into the ground. So why would we hurt someone if it's aesthetically pleasing on the home? Then it's not making it harder for the water to get into the ground. I don't personally see why we would count that on building or coverage, because it's not impeding anything. It might be moving it 5 feet that way, but it's still sending it to the ground, right?
And you talk about gutters in most instances on the edge of a roof. So to your point,
If that allows people to have different things on their property, I mean, I don't know what the unintended consequences are, but I don't.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, just
Just
from
thinking
a,
about it, I don't see that being an issue, with any water problems.
from a practicality standpoint, how often is it shown on the drawings that we receive?
It's a good question. Probably not often, if I'm guessing.
So, we then have a logistics problem because we're gonna be sending people back to find out what the leave dimension is. And to Ryan's point, is it having any negative impact?
I have, I feel both ways on this issue. One, I agree with Mr. Gibbons in that we're concerned about impermeable coverage. So, if the eave sticks out, when the water falls or gets to the ground, it still has the ability to soak into the ground. So I agree with that 100%. And my initial reaction is to say, let's not count the overhang. But builders being builders, if we say that we're not doing that, will they then will they build flat walls that are more commercial looking with no eaves so that they can maximize the amount of space that they're building on? I'm not sure if that, I leave it to our experts to say whether that could be a loophole that we might be creating. If it's not, then I agree that we should only be counting the footprint and not the overhang.
Or if I can through the chair, maybe you put a minimum or a maximum. The eve can't exceed 2 feet or 1.5 feet.
Some limitation, right? So nobody goes hog wild and it's fine.
Hackensack, yeah, basically Hackensack, I think on setbacks, I think you can project 2 feet if I'm not mistaken. They have that in their ordinance.
Well,
That makes sense to me.
So we have an allowance for, as far as it being measured from the setback perspective. So a roof eave can project up to 2.5 feet into a required yard.
Right.
I think to the mayor's point, if you start regulating eaves as being included, I think builders will say, well, I'll just lop off the eaves.
Lop off the eaves, and now you're gonna have, now maybe it's not gonna look.
Eaves tend to be more traditional looking and it's subjective, but I think they are part of the more traditional
Right.
development style in this area. But again, to a point,
Eaves create curb appeal, and curb appeal creates higher property values, and people are investing. Sometimes this is their biggest investment in their lives, their homes. So that's my concern. I want to make sure that the eaves stay, the overhang stays.
So I think if you want to encourage them, you would exempt them up to a point, not to exceed like 18 inches or 2 feet would be probably a typical dimension. And again, I think the downside is probably limited from a functional standpoint because you still have the undeveloped ground underneath, which can absorb rainwater. And from a bulk standpoint, again, if it's limited to 18 inches or 2 feet, the impact to neighbors is probably going to be minimal, but you do get, I think, the aesthetic enhancement. And I think eaves, there's also a functional aspect where they protect the house, frankly, from, rain hitting the sides directly or, I don't know, infiltrating the wall, the
Well,
envelope.
it's for air circulation too into your attic. Obviously, they're vented,
Stop
so
it. Yeah. Right. Good point.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think it makes sense having a limit, like you said, 18 inches, 2 feet. But I don't, as of right now, I don't see a downside to it. Not counting them certainly could result in what the mayor was suggesting and having ugly houses and more coverage. So I'd certainly be in favor of having that with a limit.
all right. And again, there are towns that do this. So there are models out there. I'm looking at one in Summit it's just an ordinance I'm familiar with. Definition of building area is as follows, just for example. The horizontal plan projection of all covered or roofed areas on a lot, whether permanent or temporary, including decks, cantilevered areas, bay or bow windows, and similar projections, but excluding roof eaves, roof overhangs, projections above entranceways and garage doors, and chimneys projecting a maximum distance of 24 inches from the structure. So that's a word salad, but I think we can maybe look at that for, as a reference, if that's the direction you want to head or similar.
I'm comfortable with that. I don't know about the rest of the board.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would say that would make sense. I think we come up with a model based using that as a starting point.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't open up an opportunity to create more coverage than the word salad sounded good.
Use that. But I think you guys have worked, I think we've honed in on a definition that works for the borough. So just adding that provision of the exemption would be the only thought. And if you guys are okay with that, I think we understand the intent. Work with Marina and, Rob and the building department to tighten that up so it's clear. And I think at that point, we'll be in good shape to cover most of the major outstanding ordinance issues.
Yeah, okay, I think that makes sense. Is any disagreement from the board? Okay. Okay. So we'll put this back again as another agenda item on a future meeting when you have that language worked up. And we'll hopefully.
Well, for that provision, I know, I guess the borough, wants to get these, does the board want to see it again, the one provision, or do you think we should pass it along at this
The
juncture?
board will have to review the ordinance
Yeah.
change again anyways, once the council introduces it.
True.
But if the board's okay with the way it's written now, plus these two changes, the change regarding the roof height and then the change regarding the roof overhangs, then I can work with Tom and Rob and Steve, and we could finalize it and then send it over to the council for their introduction.
I have to say that makes sense because the next introduction would be April 24th. And then we'd have to come back to you guys and then have to come back to the council. So, there's no harm in it. Council can make changes and send it to you and you can send it back with changes suggested to the council. So I think it'd be a more efficient use of time if we move forward. But that's just my opinion as one member of the board.
That's fine from my perspective for logistical purposes, unless anyone else on the board has a strong feeling or objection.
I'm fine with that.
Same here.
Okay. All right. So we'll move forward on that.
All right, so I will work on that. And on that note, the board's April 23rd meeting is going to be canceled, so we wouldn't have a meeting before the next council meeting.
Sure.
So.
Sure. All right. So let's proceed then on that basis then. That's a fair
All
point. I actually have that here on my list of things to finish up with.
So we're canceled on the 23rd?
We are canceled on the 23rd due to a lack of agenda.
Oh, what?
So, with that, I will circulate the draft state plan response, and I'll just ask board members to email me feedback if there is any. There is a May 5th deadline, but again, I think we could, that system probably works.
Yeah, that's fine. I think just given the fact that, where we stand today and with that deadline, that makes, let's go on that basis.
All right.
Last item on our agenda then for the evening comes under, I guess it could come under correspondence, but the mayor received a letter, or I guess an email correspondence from one of the business owners in town concerning our signage regulations, and had asked us to look into some issues that have been raised by some of the businesses in town concerning what they feel are somewhat difficult restrictions in which to operate their businesses, and they're looking for us to evaluate whether some relief on the existing signage regulations can be considered. So,
Mr. Chairman, may I place this in context?
Yeah, I was just about to turn to you and ask you to, if you had any more details outside of what's in the emails. Yeah, please go ahead.
So this actually has a multi-layered effect or concern. One of the things that I've consistently heard from the residents for the last 14 years that I've been doing public service is the appearance of Kinderkamack Road and Main Street, but mostly Kinderkamack Road. Now, Kinderhook Road is a county road. We don't control it. The county owns from curb to curb, but really any major changes to Kinderhook Road requires county approval. Over the 14 years, we thought about setting up a redevelopment zone, but the businesses and the property owners did not want that. A redevelopment zone would have a dedicated tax, and that dedicated tax would go solely to improvements such as streetscape and stuff like that. We've done some streetscape. Actually, we did it before I came on the council, so we haven't done any major streetscape for the last 14 years, other than where properties were improved. So the apartments on Kinderhook Road has streetscape. Okay. So residents have been, desirous that we improve the look of Kinderhook Road. Second, recently, one of our property owners, I'm not going to say who because I don't think that's necessary, had a inflated man or totem. I guess you call it a totem man that was floating around. And so then that came to my attention from a resident, and I asked our code enforcer, no reason to give names, to take a look at the way we're enforcing our signage. Now, by the way, I just put it in the chat. So if you look at the chat, you'll see I put 416-47D. And that's our ordinance. So our code enforcer went to all the properties because we certainly want to be consistent and fair and equal. So if there is one that we're enforcing it to one of our businesses or commercial properties, we want to enforce it on all of our commercial properties. And what I didn't realize is that we have not been enforcing our ordinance, which right now says no sign, logograms, pictures, temporary or otherwise, on or inside a window shall be greater than 2 feet in height or cover more than 20% of the square footage area of the window. Signs on the inside of the window shall be considered part of the main sign for the purpose of calculating minimum allowed signage. Any area within 48 inches of the sign is considered window area for signage purposes. Now, the third level I want us to understand is that we have held our commercial properties to our signage ordinances. We have consistently, when a commercial property came before us, especially if they were simply asking for a food handler's license, looked at the sign they were going to put up and talked to that about, and we have a very strong expectation from the land use board that that they do not exceed a certain look. So to wrap it all up, what we have is we have an ordinance enforcement issue. We have a signage issue. We have a consistency issue based on those commercial properties have come before us recently versus those commercial properties haven't been before us in a long time. And we also have a town appearance issue. And that town appearance issue goes to property values and goes to curb appeal. So this is not, in my opinion, a small matter, but a big matter. Now, there are, and I've noticed this, over the years, that there are windows that are very commercial looking. And by commercial looking, I mean like New York City, 42nd Street, where, these, and I want to pick out one business, but, 20% off here, 40% off here and stuff like that. And I think that we have an obligation to the town, to the residents, that our commercial property area looks as appropriate and as inviting as possible so that the overall appearance of the town is positive. But I think we also have an obligation to our commercial businesses that they do need to advertise. Now, let me just say that I think if your business is dependent upon window signs in my opinion, again, my father, not again, but my father had a small trucking company his whole life. He was a small businessman. He had a Dunkin' Donuts. He had a sub shop. So he had several different businesses. If your business is dependent upon a sign to stay open, then your business is probably not going to stay open. Having said that, we do, signs can generate foot traffic from time to time, and that foot traffic can be very important to the bottom line of a commercial business, and I want to be understanding of that. I think our current ordinance of no more than 2 feet or cover more than 20% of the square footage seems a little minimalistic. But I think the request for 75 to 80% is a far reach. So it is the proper, I want us to enforce our laws. I don't want us to have laws that are unfair or onerous for anyone, for a resident or for a commercial. And I have had a position as mayor that we can fix anything that is inappropriate within a month or two, because we can bring these ordinances to the town and update them. And I think we should. And we have certainly done this with impervious coverage, and we've done it with other things with the land use board. And I'd like us to continue to update our ordinances given the current world we live in. So a long way of saying, I think our current ordinance 41647D and signage in general, which we have talked about looking at, needs a little more fairness. But I don't think that going all the way up to 75-80% is appropriate. I also am concerned not just about the amount of square footage or feet in height, length and width and height, or percentage, but also the type of sign that could go up. Because I want our ordinances to be enforced equally and fairly. So that's why when this came up, I had many different businesses reach out to me. I said, listen, I hear what you're saying. Let me bring this to the land use board and the council. Maybe we can give you some relief, but we can't have, I don't think we should continue to allow, first, our ordinances not being enforced, and second, some of the signage that I'm currently seeing. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, but so I return the meeting to the chairman. Thank you, Mr. Caslin.
Okay. Comments from the board?
So what were we seeing in terms of, so obviously this wasn't getting enforced and people were going over the 20%. Do we have any idea of where they were? Were they 50%, 80%? In general of a handful of businesses?
Mr. Chairman, may I answer that?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
there is a business at the north end of town that has completely covered their windows in a sign. There are businesses that are running 75, 80% in the north part of town. There are businesses in the middle part of town. So if you think of the northern part of Kinnickinnick, the middle part of Kinnickinnick, and the southern part, who have all sorts of stuff in their windows, which is a form of advertisement. So things that they sell are now in the windows. These are, I'm just giving you the highlights. There's all through. There are, and it's restaurants, it's manufactured goods that are for sale, so retail. And if you go to the south part of town, not so much, but there are still, exceeding the 20% or 2x2 signs. So for instance, a 10-foot by 10-foot window, I think we would be talking about a 2x2 sign. I think that might be a little bit too small if you're looking to advertise a sale or some spring sale or something like that. And I also think that perpetual signs, perpetual posters are also a problem. It's not in the ordinance. I think we need to, there is in the ordinance By the way, for your benefit, if you want, there is a thing called, let me bring it up. It's called ecode360.com. And Mr. Chairman, can I share my window for a second?
Sure.
All right. Okay, so this is right there. You can see right there, ecode360.com. And this is 41647, and it talks about each sign should be no higher than, this is talking more of the, I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, more of the signs that sit above the business that, you know, we normally see, or the monument signs that we sometimes allow. Then it says no height shall exceed more than 8 inches the face of the building. So these are the major signs that we talk about that indicate a business. And D deals with the temporary signs. But then it talks about each commercial business should be sure to have a banner for no more than 28 days. So we do already have limitations on banners, but I don't know if the signs inside the window would be considered banners because I'm not an expert on this. And then from time to time, governing body may designate by. So I think we really need to look at this entire ordinance. And as a whole. And as I said, it's you can easily do this. When I originally put this into the search engine, let me just show you what I did so that you can do the same. All I did was ecode 360 River Edge NJ 416, and immediately it comes up. And I could even do 416-47. And it should go to, well, actually we go to 46, and then you just, when you get to this here, you scroll down until you get to 47, you click on it, and here we are. And this is the ordinance that I think we need to look at. I think we should give some relief to our businesses, but I'm not in support of the relief they asked. I think if I was a business person, I'd ask for the most relief, assuming I wouldn't get it. So I don't think that they would have a huge problem with that. But you know, and it's this one that we're talking about right now. But I don't think we should stop here. I think we should all maybe share some thoughts and then go back and read this, and at our next meeting, maybe come with some specific ideas, certainly about the 20% square foot area, and certainly about the 2 feet in height. And do we want to change that? Do we want the council to change that, essentially? What do we want to recommend to the council? Because I'm sure the council will want to weigh in what they think. But I think this is a good time for us to look at that and think about, you know, how it affects our commercial businesses and how it affects the overall look of the town, and therefore the rights of the residents in regards to property.
So, Mr. Mayor, the feedback you're getting mostly from businesses has to do with more permanent signing as opposed to the temporary signing, since we already have, there's a mechanism for that in the code here, is what I'm hearing. Is that accurate?
I don't know if that's accurate for all the businesses, but
Okay.
yeah, I think for the most part.
Okay. And are we talking illuminated, not illuminated? Is that the,
Well, I think that's one of the things, I mean, I remember over the 6 years I'm now on the, we've talked about that. We do have issues with that. There is a business on the south end of town. For instance, we don't allow neon signs, but now with LED signs and the amount of illumination, you can jump this thing up. There was a sign in the south part of town that at night was glaringly bright, and it moved. And we have an ordinance that says they can't move. So the code enforcer said to me, well, the owner is saying he's going to turn off the movement, and does that satisfy? And I said, well, what does our ordinance say? And he says, well, yeah. I said, and the illumination's kind of high. Why don't you ask him to bring it down? But we don't have any enforcement of how much lumens we allow in our signs. And that's becoming a bigger issue. We had an issue 3 years ago, I believe. It was during COVID or just post-COVID. On Route 17, Paramus allowed a illuminated LED sign to go up on Route 4 that was Paramus property, and it was so bright that at night during the winter time, it was glaring into the homes at the south part of town. But we didn't have a leg to stand on with that one. We did push, and Paramus said they would speak to the signage, and the guy did reduce the amount of illumination. But I think that's also something we need to talk about. And so I would hope Mr. Costa, Mr. Burns, Mr. Demkin could, and maybe Mr. Alter could look at what other towns are doing in regard to signage, and we could recommend to the council a holistic improvement on 416, and maybe not limited to 47, but there are other areas that we might want to look into. But I think the first thing we need to do tonight is, does this body think that this is something we should consider increasing the amount of signage that's permitted, or should we simply tell our code enforcer to enforce the rules as they are? And if so, if we are going to consider something, some sort of relief for commercial businesses, maybe then this body should task our professionals to look at what other towns are doing and send that information to us, so that at our next meeting, we can have a conversation about it, and then we can make a recommendation to the council.
But I think unless and until we do end up with a change in the ordinance, I think the code enforcer needs to enforce what we have on the books. I mean, that's probably an easy one.
Yeah.
But so I look to members of the board,
I personally agree with that. The laws have to be enforced. If it's a law, it should be enforced.
and what do you think, Mr. Gaudier, about contemplating a review of changes to the ordinance on signage?
I may be willing to look at that, but in the meantime, I definitely feel that, the current laws need to be enforced, like you said. I agree.
I have
Just
some-
a question about the request from the business owners. I'm looking at the whatever you want to call the document is that they provided. And it really specifically is talking about coverage of the windows. It's not really, they're not referencing building signage, height, width, square footage or anything. They're basically just saying they want to do 75% to 80% of the interior windows to be used for signage and promotional displays.
That's
So-
correct. I'm just simply saying, as mayor, if we're going to touch one part of the ordinance, why don't we look at the others too? We may wish to expedite that one part if this body wishes to recommend to the council in a revision of that 41647D, then this body can just do that and say, we'll look at the rest at a later date. Or this body could say, well, let's look at all of 47, A, B, C, D, E, and I think there might be an F. And so, I'm wondering what appetite this body has for looking at it, if any.
Ms. Boland?
I've always been concerned with signage, so I would be more conservative. They already are allowed to have their own sign above their place of business. I think 20% is plenty for a window sign, because that's in addition to what they already have. So I would try to keep it closer to the 20% than increase it.
Mr. Salva?
Yeah, no, I'd just like to add, certainly like all ordinances and laws, right? Let's say you make it 30%, right? Well, you're always gonna have commercial owners that then push it. Then they go to 40%, right? So it's sort of like, you try to solve you make a concession, and then there's always gonna be like a little bit of a, I don't want to say free rider, but you'll have folks that are just gonna push it to 35 to 40. So that's something that has to be considered, right? As I say, give them an inch to take a mile. So that's something to be, so I say for the time being, enforce what's on the books, and then certainly we can have the experts think about, if it can be increased to 25, but certainly that should be taken in mind that once you increase it, it's not a guarantee that folks won't take further advantage of that.
It's a good point.
Mr. Gibbon?
So in reading what was sent to us, two of the things that they were talking about was one, saving energy and kind of blocking out the sun. First question is, couldn't they just have some sort of film on their window to lower their costs? Is that, I assume that's not against any of our ordinances to have some darker windows, to prevent the light from coming in and decrease in their heating and cooling costs and any damage it might do to anything inside. So I don't think that's a justification for doing this. And if it's for promotional items, so if it's to decrease their costs and then it's to have promotional items, then it shouldn't need to be up there all of the time. So if a restaurant has a special buy one, get one, or 20% off or whatever it is, then that could be up there for a short period of time, which I think is allowed in the banner section, and maybe some sort of consideration could be had for, a period of time, they could have a larger display. So if they really want to have a promotion, which is great, and get more people in the door, then they could do that for a period of time, and they can have that bigger sign up for 50% or something like that for 3 months, or something along those lines to allow, obviously we want our businesses to do well, but, to go back to, what Mr. Mayor was saying, I hear it too. A lot of the people have an issue with the way Kinderconnect Road looks, and I do, you drive through there and a lot of it is dilapidated. A lot of the buildings don't look good. And it doesn't help us. It doesn't help us as a town, our property values or anything. So, I would hope that even, the redevelopment, I don't know anything about that kind of thing and how it can be enforced, but I'd love to see something, being done even along those lines to improve our downtown area, the Kinderconnect area, because it would make a huge difference for our town and our values and the overall attractiveness of our town if we can make all of that look better. But to circle back, I think if we can't allow them to go crazy, we want them to do well. We want the businesses to succeed. I think I would be more of a proponent of temporary signs, not necessarily a permit or something like that, but allowable for a certain period of time, to have a larger sign of some sort, but for a promotion and then take it down. So that's my 2 cents.
I think also too, if we were to look at any sort of increase in size and location of signage and windows like that, we would probably need to get, I would suggest we get the police department's input from a public safety perspective as well, because I think would make their job potentially more challenging. So that's something we may want to keep in mind if we were to go down this route. I know in the past that, we've talked about looking at the sign ordinance, and given the changes, I think, Mr. Mayor, you touched on with technology and signage and, the creativity of signs these days. I don't know necessarily we have to change it, but perhaps it would be a worthwhile to have the professionals take a look at the sign ordinance and see if there's anything worth modernizing, I guess, for lack of a better term, just, and provide some information to the board for the board to consider, is there a next step from what their findings are?
I just wanted to offer, I think as everyone goes out and, starts to pay attention to these things, not that you haven't already, just some things to think about. One is that once you allow the signs, whatever size they are, you can't regulate content, right? So what's allowed for the pizzeria is allowed for the 7-Eleven, is allowed for the florist, et cetera. I would also note that the frontages of the different business establishments range in size as far as width. So you have, again, the pizzeria that might be 15 feet wide. You have the 7-Eleven that's, 30, 50 feet wide. And so when you talk about percentages, you might end up inviting lots of signage, from a percentage standpoint. So whether it's 20%, 50%, 80%, the more window you have, the more signage you might have. And I think, from an enforcement standpoint, you want something that's readily observable. So maybe a standard, let's say for promotional signs, if it's a 24 by 36 or whatever the dimensions are that make sense, I think you can look at it and tell sort of right away if it's allowed or not. without having to bring out a tape measure or, get too complicated to try to figure it out. Certainly whether or not a sign's illuminated is one thing. So, and maybe again, trying to figure out what the intent of all this, if the real issue is that businesses want to have a way to, again, advertise for promotions, that's one thing on a temporary basis versus permanent signage, which, it just adds to visual clutter over time, right? You have the menu sign, you have the promotional sign, and never gets taken down, just gets added to. The trick with the temporary stuff is, was it there for 30 days? Has it been there for 32 days? So it's, again, I think you want to come up with a standardized way that allows them to promote what they need to, but that can also be controlled and is reasonable from the public perspective and doesn't become cluttered. So those are my 2 cents.
Mr. Chairman, can I recommend to you as the chairman that you direct Lisa and Ed to send a copy of this part of our discussion to the business administrator and to Steve Dempkin, who's not here tonight because he couldn't be here, and make sure that our code enforcer and our building inspector coordinate with each other with the BA, because it sounds like what I'm hearing this body say is that we're not going to consider a larger sort of signage, and that we want the code to be enforced as is right now. Right now, Mr. DeRosa has issued a warning to everyone, which is standard procedure because we like to give our businesses a chance. They have come back and asked for accommodation. I think this body is saying it's not interested in any major accommodation. I think this body is saying that it expects to move forward with summons if the signage is not corrected. Am I correct on that?
That
Is that your
seems,
sense?
that's the consensus I'm seeing right now, yes.
Well, then, I know my role as mayor is in this particular meeting right now is as a member, and you're the chair, so I would ask that you direct the our secretary and our land use board clerk to share that information with the BA, and the BA share it with the code enforcer and the building inspector, and that's what this body is interested in doing at this time, or recommending at this time.
Okay. Comments from the board?
I think it makes sense.
Objections? Okay. With that, Mr. Halter and Mr. Chivarella, would you kindly make those communications to Mr. Depkin and to the building department as well, and to the code enforcement officer?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I will send them a copy of this meeting, the audio, so they'll be able to see what was said. Keep in mind one point that I hear. We only have one code enforcement agent in town, and there's a lot of violations going on. And in my guess, it would be almost impossible to enforce this across the whole town for every business. So there's going to have to be some flexibility somewhere to make people adhere to our code. That's it.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Alter, yes, we have only one code enforcer, and he is not full-time. And I don't think there's flexibility in enforcement. I think there is flexibility of enforcement over time. It will, he will have to move to the most egregious to the least egregious, given his part-time status. And that, I think I think that's just a slight difference. And if you could make sure that when you send to our code enforcer, Mr. Rosa and Steve Dempkin, as well as the business administrator who is, responsible for all the employees under the borough, if you and also the police department, which would be good, so that they can chime in. Would you please edit it down so that they don't have to sit through the whole meeting, if you can, or tell them the timestamp for which they should start listening, and just so they have more efficient use of their time.
Yes, I will do that.
And Mr. Castellan, do you believe it's the will of this body that we are asking our professionals to review, to look at other ordinances at other towns and come back to us? I think that's what you said.
I'd like to, I think it makes sense because I know in the past we've had some discussion on this point that, you know, there were some things in the sign ordinance that should be looked at or considered for some sort of updating, but I know it's not really, I think we had gotten focused on other more critical issues. Not that this isn't critical, but I think there were other things that took priority over that. So I think it would probably make sense, just, you know, given that, you know, it's within our purview, that, you know, we take a look and see if there is anything based on, you know, where, you know, the world is today. I think, as somebody said earlier, if there's anything in that ordinance that bears consideration for some type of amendment or modification. Unless,
Yep, and I can just add, I don't have a problem working with Tom and Rob and the other board professionals to try and come up with a draft. And I just want to note that in that specific section of the Borough Code 416-47D, E Code 360 says that it hasn't been updated since 1998. So there's a lot of changes in the borough and signage that could definitely be updated since 1998. So I'm sure there's room for improvement.
nothing wrong with looking at what you've been doing to see if there's room for improvement. And in light of what Marina just said in terms of the last time this was looked at, it probably bears us as a body having a wholesale look at the ordinance to see if it's there are things there that are still meaningful to be kept in place, or if there is room for improvement.
Mr. Chairman, being a school teacher, I always feel like setting deadlines is a good idea. You want a project? Our next meeting is, I believe, the 14th of May. So would you find it acceptable that some sort of memo or report or information be sent to this body somewhere around the 7th of May?
I know students never like homework, Mr. Mayor. So before agreeing to that, I'll ask Tom and Marina before I commit you to something. What is a reasonable turnaround on?
It's about a
that?
month. I don't know if we'll have a full-blown ordinance, but I think we could start talking about issues and coming up with a list of things to focus on. Maybe
yeah.
highlight some language that's problematic.
I think that's a good place to start. I think we start with an issues list and we go from there, because maybe there are things that you'll come up with that the board will come back and say, no, that's okay, we'll leave it as is, rather than trying to have you craft a whole new ordinance until we figure out what the issues are.
Right. And we could take a look at other ordinances too, just to say, you know, this is what Ordell's doing, Wes, what, you know.
Okay.
Give some examples.
That work for all?
Sounds good.
Even the kids who got to do the homework? Okay.
Yep, that's fine.
All right. With that, anything else? We've hit the end of the agenda for the evening. Anything else from the board before we call it a night? Miss
I
Steinle has
did
something.
have one other comment, that the financial disclosure statements are due by the end of the month. So you should be able to fill them out on the portal.
Two things, Mr. Chairman, I forgot to mention. One, we're trying really hard to get back into the Borough Hall. Since we're not having a meeting on the 23rd, I think there is a high probability we will be back at Borough Hall on May 7th, and I think people should plan accordingly. Our borough attorney has given us a memo on this, and because we are boards and commissions must be in person, so we don't really have a choice about this. Hopefully Borough Hall will have some multimedia ability to it, so that you know, we have to be there, but maybe some of the experts might come in through electronics. Second, goodness, I just ran out of my head. Hold on a second. Oh, we have an alternate 2 that's not been filled. And Mr. Alter wanted me to bring this to your attention. We don't want to send out a general, would you like to join the land use board? Because this is a very, very important board. And we also don't want to have to say to people, thanks for saying you want to be on it, but no, we're not going to accept you. So if you know of someone who you think would be a good fit, responsible, can show up twice a month, except for vacations or major business issues, who can make that commitment and who you think will put, the concerns of the town and also understand that we're looking at positive and negative criteria for granting a variance. So if you know someone like that, a level-headed person like that, please, would you call me? You all have my cell phone number, right? So call me or send an email to me, but it'd be good to have a conversation. Even if you send an email to me, I'm going to call you back and say, hey, let's think about this person, because it'd be really good for us if we could have that. That'd be very, very important. Okay. And that was the 2 things.
Okay. Anything else? So give that one some thought and
I'm sorry, there's just so many things on my plate right now. It's not that I'm complaining about it. This is, I love doing what I do. We need someone for Historic Commission who has, and let me use the verbiage correctly. Here we go. So we currently lost Class A Historic Commission. And the definition for a Class A member is a person who is knowledgeable in building design and construction or architectural history and may reside outside the municipality. If an engineer is knowledgeable and experienced in construction, he or she would qualify. So if you know of someone who would like to be a part of the Historic Commission, they don't meet nearly as much as we do. It used to be Beth Canigo because she took architecture classes when she was in college and therefore qualified. But if you know somebody who would like to be on the Historic Commission and, has that minimum experience or ability, so I think it could even be a contractor based on the way I read it, but I'm not a legal person. Please again, send that name to me too, or call me and tell me, and so that we can appoint that person to the Historic Commission.
Mr. Mayor, I don't necessarily have anyone off the top of my head, but is there some place where there is a description of what that person would need to be? Maybe it could be sent to us or?
So I received this from the chair of the Historic Commission, and this is the definition that she said was on the website. I don't know that for certain, but I just put it into the chat.
Okay.
So you can see it now. A person who is knowledgeable in building design and construction or architectural history and may reside. So they don't have, I prefer them to be a River Edge resident, but if they don't mind volunteering on our Historic Commission, that's fine. Just so we can fill those positions if possible.
And that definition is in the Borough Code at section 240-4.
Oh, even better. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, anything further? Mr. Alter.
Yeah, just a note that the April 23rd meeting is canceled. I know it was already been said. And the next meeting will be May 14th, which we already have 2 applications for.
Okay, so we know we're definitely on for the 14th. Okay. Anything further? I'll look for a motion to close the meeting then.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Gaudier. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Boland. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstain? All right, we stand adjourned. It's 9:15 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Hi.
See you in May.